Hi everyone, I'm Ashley from Drone Delivery Canada, and today is our very first episode of DDC Spotlight. DDC Spotlight is going to take you to a behind-scenes take on current projects that we're working on. And the very first episode that we have here today is the supply chain resilience amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And I have none other than the Michael Zara, President and CEO of Drone Delivery Canada, here to answer some questions. So before we start, let's just talk a little bit about what's going on with the current state given the COVID-19 pandemic. It's affected many industries and, a lot of people have been affected by this virus. Can you please just give us a take on how it specifically affected DDC?
Thank you. So yes, definitely, obviously the pandemic has affected everybody around the world, billions of people and most industries. What's interesting though, as much as the pandemic is a terrible thing, and of course we wish it didn't happen, and we hope that they find a solution to it very quickly, it has certainly raised the profile of DDC, and it has raised the profile of the industry, and it has resulted in a number of new use cases and applications that we've seen. So prior to the pandemic, the use cases were really around remote communities, areas that had difficulty for access, for last mile deliveries, or where time was of the essence, time was critical for a delivery. With the pandemic, there are two new use cases. The first one is limiting person-to-person contact. So a community or a company might want to self-isolate or prevent cross-contamination between facilities, but they need to keep the supply chain open, so drones are perfect for doing that. And then the fourth one is really around business continuity and disaster recovery. So when these sort of events happen, a lot of companies tend to dust off their disaster recovery plans and realize that they don't have plans in place and they don't have a backup to their supply chain. So they're looking at drones as being an integral part of their supply chain for first mile, middle mile, last mile, or what have you. So definitely we've seen an increase in activity as a result of the pandemic.
The pandemic has definitely opened a lot of doors for DDC, especially with the need to reduce human-to-human contact. Can you tell us more about other applications and verticals that have been brought to the table because of this?
We've gotten an increase in inbound activity. Predominantly, I would say it's related to healthcare, obviously. So it could be healthcare in general. It could be medical labs. It could be hospitals. It could be seniors' homes. We've seen a lot of increase in inbound inquiries in those markets. Also, the government, federal and provincial, obviously, who's responsible for healthcare, and also Indigenous communities. So we've seen an increase in activity, an increase from Indigenous communities because they are particularly susceptible to the virus, and they're trying to self-isolate. So drones are a perfect solution for them. So we've seen a lot of activity from all those vertical markets, I would say.
Working with remote communities seems to be a big focus for DDC. Can you tell us how we plan to help these communities and what we offer them?
Well, these communities, and there's about 1,000 of them in Canada, and obviously there are remote communities all around the world, they have a few healthcare issues that they face. The first one is they typically have a lack of healthcare infrastructure. A lot of them don't have a hospital on the community, for instance. They might have a community nurse, but they don't have a hospital or medical lab necessarily. And then also, these First Nations communities tend to be particularly susceptible to the virus because they often have greater underlying healthcare issues. So they might have a greater instance of diabetes, obesity, tuberculosis, and these sort of things, which make them even at greater risk for the pandemic. So a lot of these communities are trying to self-isolate to prevent the virus coming into the community, but they need to keep the supply chain open, but limit person-to-person contact. So drone delivery ends up being a perfect application for that.
On the topic of First Nations, can you tell us a little bit more about working with Beausoleil and Georgina Island First Nations?
Those are two First Nations communities in Northern Ontario, and the projects are very similar in terms of how they're operating and what the benefits are intended to be. They're both COVID-19 related projects. Beausoleil was actually the first COVID-19 drone delivery project with a humanitarian agency involved announced in Canada. So we're very proud to be the first there. So in both instances, as I mentioned, they're First Nations communities. They have a portion of the community on the mainland. They have a portion of the community on an island. And they both have a ferry as well, but they want to limit use of the ferry and ferry traffic, and they want to limit person-to-person contact, as I mentioned earlier. But they also need to keep the supply chain open. So they need to move products, mail, what have you. So drones are perfect for that solution. Now, in these particular projects, both being COVID-19, the focus is really on moving products that are related to the pandemic. So things like PPE, so masks and gloves and hand hygiene products, testing swabs. We can send testing swabs to the community. They can use them for testing, then fly them back to the mainland, and they can go out to a lab for analysis for COVID-19 verification. So that's the kind of product that we're going to be moving, predominantly related to the pandemic, but hypothetically they could be used for anything.
From the Beausoleil event we had a couple weeks ago now, there seem to be many different partners involved from completely different organizations. Can you tell us how they all came together to be a part of this one project?
So Georgina Island was funded 100% by the federal government, Indigenous Services Canada. For Beausoleil, it was done a little differently. So it was actually an agreement between Drone Delivery Canada and Global Medic, who was a global humanitarian organization. So they contracted with us to implement the project at Beausoleil for pandemic assistance and pandemic relief for the Beausoleil community. It was funded through a variety of sources, including the Air Canada Foundation, and the largest majority funder of the project was OEC Group, which is a large logistics supply chain organization operating in Canada. So we're very grateful for the support of all the funders of this project, and for Global Medic for engaging with us to implement this project to help the community during the pandemic.
And how are the project initiatives of Drone Delivery Canada being received by the Beausoleil and Georgina Island communities?
Beausoleil started flying, I would say, a few weeks ago, towards the end of the second last week of September, I think it was. So it's still a little early. It's been very well received. As you mentioned, we had a kickoff event there a little while ago. The chief was there. He was very excited about the project and the benefits that it can bring to the community in terms of limiting person-to-person contact, but keeping the supply chain open, bringing in medical supplies, bringing in COVID-19 related supplies. That's the main thrust of the project and the benefits, but he also recognized that there are benefits to the community beyond just the pandemic benefits. So there's things like bringing technology to the community, inspiring the youth who might not have a lot of tech jobs available within the community to stimulate their interest in STEM in school, science, technology, engineering, and math, and get them excited about other things related to drones and engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, these sort of things. So there's a lot of other benefits in addition to helping with the pandemic that we're very excited about. We're happy to be bringing to the community, and then also the chief, very excited about that as well for the community. So all the partners, the opportunity was brought to the table through Air Canada Cargo and the Pontiac Group, and then as I mentioned, it was Global Medic who engaged with us to implement it, and then predominantly funded by OEC. So everybody really came together in true Canadian style, I would say, to help in this situation. So I think it's a great use case and a great demonstration of what we can do.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. Thank you again for taking the time to answer some of our questions, and looking forward to hearing about future project updates. And to our viewers and supporters, thank you so much, and stay tuned for more DDC Spotlight videos coming your way.